Ne-am întors cu ambasadorul Turciei la București, iar întrebarea pe care am adresat-o înaintea pauzei de publicitate era de ce sprijină Rusia regimul lui Bashar al-Assad din Siria. Mr. Ambassador?
Of course, I don't want to read what do they have in their mind. But remember, in 2008, it was Georgia.
Yes, I do remember. Unfortunately.
And we all sat back. We couldn't do anything to our dear friend there.
Sure.
And in 2014, it was Ukraine. And remember, now, today, nobody talks about Crimea. Crimea has gone. It's in the pocket. We say, of course, on paper, saying that we will never recognize, and this is Turkey's official position, and I know that this is the official position of Romania as well, we will never recognize the annexation illegally of Crimea by Russia.
But silently, we all accepted.
Yes. Through Syria, intervention in Syria, now nobody talks about neither Crimea, nor Georgia, nor Donbass. It's forbidden. It's forgotten.
Sure.
This is one reason to divert the attention of international community from what has happened in its periphery.
This would be one reason.
This is one reason. The second reason, it has always been an ideal of reaching to warm waters territorially to the Mediterranean. Because, as you know, Black Sea is a small sea, and if Assad leaves the country,
and where Turkey is the most powerful,
together with Romania and our partners,
together Romanian partners,
and if Assad leaves, there will be no place in Syria for Russia. They just want. Already they have air bases. They have a huge naval base. They already put their ships, military planes. So strategically, probably they are thinking that they should not lose such a huge opportunity. And thirdly, they are showing their muscles to the international community. Hey, I'm here, so you should show respect to me. I mean, firing, for example, missiles from Caspian to Daesh targets or whatever targets. This terrorist doesn't know whether this missile is coming from Caspian or from a plane. It's a show to the international community to show that I have this artillery, and beware of me. Of course, Russia is a great power, and international community should show due respect based on the rules of the international law. This is for sure, and actually we have shown this about 2 decades before this plane incident in our relationship with Russia. We increased them a lot. It was a relationship of equals to the better of our two of our nations. But when you started to dictate your own position to the other actors, then the game changes. So this is my humble reading.
Well, it's not humble at all, actually. You are very much aware of the situation there. You mentioned 3 reasons. One, to divert the public opinion and the international community from the 2 wars that Russia started and the occupied territories, Georgia and Ukraine. The second, the bases that are needed to be open to the sea through the bases they have in Syria now. And the third one, to show that they are still a big power. Now, Mr. Ambassador, I understand this, but we are speaking now about millions of people which are have destroyed their life. Mm-hmm. Iraq, Syria, north of Africa. And everybody is asking himself, how could this organization, Daesh, Al-Qaeda, Muslim Brothers, how do they exist? Why are still alive? Because, okay, maybe the aircrafts, and I agree with you, were not very efficient in Syria at least. But in the same time, those groups have weapons, have money to buy the weapons and so on. And they're still powerful, even now. How is that possible?
This is the right question actually to ask. There is a dirty group, you say, everyone is against it, but you cannot win it over. So you have to ask, what is the root causes? There is an issue of this huge Sunni resentment, both in Iraq and in Syria. So these people, these terrorist groups, are finding ground, and their stories is coming meaningful to these alienated Sunni masses in these two countries.
Because of Saddam and all the other...
Exactly, exactly. It was an irregular picture in both countries, as you remember.
Yes.
In Saddam, a Sunni minority was governing a huge Shia majority,
Yes.
with, of course, anti-democratic techniques, alienating people and torturing them, etc. At the same time, in Syria, a small Alevi or small Nusayri minority was doing the same to a large Sunni mass, Sunni majority. So
they were leading, a minority was leading majority.
Exactly. So when things came upside down, revanchism started. In Iraq, if there are still problems, if we still cannot talk about a unified, stable Iraq, it's because of this. There's still revanchism based, unfortunately, on sectarian basis. And the biggest danger for the Middle East is sectarianism. If there's a sectarian divide, it will be a huge calamity for all of us in the region. So we have to go to the root causes. If there's a Sunni resentment, we have to try to solve it. How we can solve it? In Syria, for example, there should be a legitimate government. That's what we are saying from the very beginning. There was no Daesh in Syria before. Daesh is a new thing. It was Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan, and people discuss why Al-Qaeda appeared.
Yes.
Even maybe you remember the former British Prime Minister Tony Blair said our involvement in Iraq is actually partly responsible for Daesh. It was a historic confession, actually. So there should be a legitimate government. This is what our Russian friends do not understand. If we insist on going with the same person who is actually responsible for the creation of all these conditions that breeds terrorism as well, we cannot go forward.
Mr. Ambassador, do you know, I don't want figures, as above, I would like you to give a general percentage. Do you know how many Sunni are in Syria and how many are other type of groups?
I have no specific figure, but it's predominantly majority.
It's a large majority.
Large majority in Syria, yes.
And in your view, the government should, the government of the country and all it takes to lead the country should be given to Sunni majority?
No, I'm not saying this, definitely. There should be no place for any sectarian ideology in our region. This is for sure for everybody.
But
so
if,
it will be dead end.
But if Bashar will fall, aren't you afraid that the Sunni will proceed with the other minorities in Syria as they did with the Sunni?
They should take necessary measures that a legitimate government, including the members of course, every group in the country, including the Alawites, the Nusayris as well, to be in the government. If they start to do the same thing that people did in Iraq, it will be a nightmare, of course. But this will also be a no solution. There is no way to go like this. We can just maybe have a very short period of pause, of hostilities, whatever, but it will blast again.
Is, in your view, a solution to federalize Syria?
Could be it's the people of Syria who will decide about it.
To have Bashar with his own part of the territory and to have the rest with Sunni and to have all the others. I'm envy Turkey is not at a position to say the future of Syria should be a federation or not. The people of Syria will decide about it. But we see no future for Bashar Assad in this country. Me neither.
Because people will not return back. As long as he's in the power, he is the responsible person of all this human tragedy and people who migrated or just flee out of persecution to Europe and elsewhere. What we say in Geneva, we decided certain principles as the international community. It will be a unified country, territorially intact country. It will be a legitimate government, whatever government do they wish, and the system, it's up to them. And also it will be a secular state. This is so important.
Yes.
Secularism is so important for the future of Syria. That's what we think. And as a Muslim majority nation, our support for the secular nation of Syria is something different. It means a lot. If a Christian majority country says it, Arab Street can think differently, saying that, well, there are different or secondary agendas behind this secularism. No, it's not. Secularism is key also, as it was key in my country, for the future of Syria.
Very, very interesting opinion. I will develop a little bit on it. Let me ask you something else, Mr. Ambassador. You are now, let's say, having problems with the PKK and the Syrian group that you also mentioned that is very active, unfortunately, on the territory of Turkey. You have an unsolved issue with the Kurd minority, which is living on your territory and also at the south of your territory. Now, how, would this be the cause of having the problems that Turkey has now? Is this the reason for which Turkey was considered by some countries not so democratic because it didn't manage to integrate a minority? I'm challenging you. I'm the devil's advocate here. Of course. These two issues, looking from, as you said, from offices in London, in different places, not even in Romania, because here we see different the reality. Important analysts, I will not quote their name just not to make them publicity, because they don't deserve. They make this simplistic approach. Turkey is in this situation because you didn't manage to integrate Kurds.
First of all, the narrative of Turkey against Kurds or Turkey's fighting against Kurds is totally wrong. In the first place, we have millions of Kurds, Kurdish origin of Turkish citizens living in my country with peace, and they are proud of being Turk and being Turkish citizens, and they are, again, millions of intermarriages. They are having their rights, they have their MPs, they can use their language freely, and etc. Second, if Turks or Turkey were against Kurds, then why shall we have cordial and very close relationship with the Iraqi Kurdistan? Iraqi Kurdistan is the only place for the Kurds living in these four countries. As you know, Kurds are living predominantly in Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Syria. So this is the only place that they have far autonomy.
Yes.
And we are the ones, actually, as a regional actor, that are more supportive of them. And if there is now a relative prosperity and stability in the northern part of Iraq, in Iraqi Kurdistan, it's predominantly thanks to Turkey's cooperation and support given to the government in this particular region. So we are not against Kurds. There's nothing such thing.
Mr. Ambassador,
we are against...
Please.
Yeah.
I was about to add something to you, just to make more interesting the discussion. If you are cooperating very well with this government of the autonomous region of the Kurds in Iraq, why don't you give them an autonomy also in Turkey?
PKK was founded in 1980s, and this issue is not an old one. It's coming from decades now. And in the beginning, they asked for independence from Turkey. And we said no way. And now, since the international community is predominantly accepted PKK as a terrorist organization, they change rhetoric and they say, no, we don't want independence, but we want autonomy. No democratic state, will allow such a demand if there is no ground for resentment. When there is a terrorist organization, it can be everywhere in the world, also in developed countries like IRA in Britain or ETA in Spain. We just need to look to two things. One, is there a ground for resentment so that these people took up arms against the illegitimate government and trying to find their ways? This is a very serious and important question to answer. Of course, nothing legitimizes the use of force.
Of course.
But in the Turkish case, if you look what we did in the last 10 years on the Kurdish dossier, so this is an answer also actually to the criticism. Now, our Kurdish citizens of Kurdish origin, can use Kurdish in broadcasting, for example. We have a state TV channel who is broadcasting 24 hours a day in Kurdish language. They can use Kurdish in schools, in universities. They can make political propaganda in Kurdish, for example. And in one of the EU countries, for example, again, I'm not naming it to be politically correct, it is by law forbidden to use your mother tongue when you are doing political campaign. But it's not in Turkey, for instance. In the courtroom, for example, if someone wants to talk in Kurdish, they can't talk in Kurdish. They have their MPs, the party who argued that they represent that part of the population. They have 60 or so MPs in the parliament. They can say any, without, of course, inviting people to violence, things which are not accepted by the majority. So there is no ground for any resettlement. If you want autonomy, let's say, of a particular minority in Hungary or elsewhere, you will discuss, you can go to referendum, but you discuss it in a civilized way, through politics, through the parliament, through civil organizations, but not by fighting.
I understand you very well.
This is their problem. They are doing this by
absolutely.
using terror against civilians, against women, against children.
Then who's
this is unacceptable.
Then who's we using, Mr. Ambassador? Who is using PKK?
PKK has been used by many different forces, and today they are also being used by major powers as well. In the past, for example,
Major powers means who?
in Syria, if you look to the Syria, for example, one of the major supporters of PYD, who is clear collaborator and wing of the PKK, sister organization, it is Russia, for example. Russia is providing them ammunition, weapon in the fight against so-called Daesh, which there is no such thing actually. In the past, their imprisoned leader, Öcalan, of the PKK, he stayed for many years in Damascus as a guest of the father of Assad.
Al-Assad, yes.
Father of Assad.
Yes.
So, as I say, PKK is a useful instrument for many different actors in the past who actually targets Turkey. Because Turkey, is a strong country, is a major power.
Yes.
Instead of facing it directly, it's always convenient to use this tool. On the other hand, when I mentioned about resentment thing and democracy thing, it is so vital, of course, to go to the root causes. Only with fighting, you cannot, end terrorism. You should go through the root causes. And we did. We started clear negotiations to try to solve the problem as the Brits did. They solved it on the IRA issue. They took Sinn Féin as interlocutor.
The political part, the political side of the...
We tried to do the same. For 3 years there was a truce, a peace in Turkey. And Diyarbakir, Mardin, Urfa, all prospered. Tourism started to pour in, investments pour in. And after the 3 years period, their leader, even from the prison, Öcalan, he made an open call saying that, well, it's over now. Just PKK members should leave their arms and leave the country. But they did not listen. After the June elections, when they see the huge change in Syria, in northern Syria, another territory that is to be given freely to their Syrian arm, so they just started to fighting against in my own country. What they did, in Syria now, the PYD is declaring cantons, what we call. So meaning, this is my place, my territory, no one can come here from the central government. So they start to cantonize in some towns of Turkish southeast, saying that no police can enter to this, city or town. If there is a problem, I'll solve it myself. I'll be judge, I'll be prosecutor as the PKK. So no one can enter here. Of course, we cannot accept such a thing. So we needed to, for example, impose curfews in such countries. They dig huge trenches, erected barricades, not to prevent the security forces going in.
But what is the population living in those areas is thinking about these initiatives of the PKK?
We are so lucky in a sense that our Kurdish citizens, most of them, majority of them, are pro-state. They are favoring their country. They are proud of being a citizen of a country like Turkey. So they are not giving public support to it. If they had given public support to it, it would have been quite difficult. What PKK wanted to do from Kandil Mountains, their leadership is there in northern Iraq, they make continuous calls to the Kurdish people in the region saying that you should all go onto the streets, riot against the state. But thanks God, our citizens are brighter than they didn't do this.
Let me go back to a very important aspect you mentioned, which was in the beginning for discussion. You mentioned as a major danger for Middle East and not seen by the international community, including by these so clever analysts, the secularism. What did you mean by that? Because I understand in Syria and Iraq, but and also in Turkey because of the examples you already gave. But do you feel this is also happening in other countries of the region, like Saudi Arabia or Qatar or Iran, or what did you mean by the danger of sectarism?
Sure. As you know, late Huntington mentioned about clash of civilizations.
Yes,
but now,
well-known book.
Unfortunately, things are proving that he's wrong, because the real clash is within civilizations.
Yes.
So Muslims are killing Muslims in the name of Allah.
Yes.
You know, with a strange mentality and ideology. Sectarianism is the major danger now, because in the Islamic world in general, if it goes into deeper, it could turn into a violent form. And in many countries, there are serious, divisions on this front. If you look Iraq, for example, there is now a Shia majority, but there is a considerable Sunni populations as well.
Absolutely, which is supporting silently Daesh.
Yes, and if there is a break of kind of clash between the two, it will be, a lake of blood. It will be very dangerous. The same goes for Syria, and already in Yemen now there is a fight, as you know.
Yes, in Yemen as well.
The whole Middle East actually is passing through tremendous difficult times, and if you look to the beneath, you will see some sectarian considerations or interest just behind it. So we need to be. That's why Turkey is favoring a secular Syria, as it foresees the same for itself. There should not be a Sunni agenda. There should not be a Shia agenda. If you try to create a belt of a certain sectarian from Iraq to Syria, which goes to Lebanon, then all the Gulf states are irked. Hey, what's going on here?
Yes.
There is also the balance of Egypt over there. So that's why we see as Turkey the biggest danger as being the sectarian thing.
Mr. Ambassador, we have 2 minutes before the second commercial break, but I want to ask you another question. Please tell me, not to me, but to the citizens, when you mention sectarian, you mean groups within the same religion, the same ethnic group, fighting with each other, but what I want to know is, are these rising by itself, or they are supported and financed by different countries in the region, in the world? I don't know. I mean, why is this? Okay, I understand the roots, but these roots are natural or they are artificial?
There's always ground, unfortunately, because if you look to the history of
past,
Islam, Islamic history, there is always a division, and unfortunately it was so bloody.
Yes.
That's why, as state actors, as Turkey, as a majority Sunni country, as Iran, who is representing the Shiite world, as Saudi Arabia, again a majority Sunni country, and other actors, we should be very careful not to play on this card, because it will be destructive for everybody. It might actually help you in the first instance, but it will definitely backfire. That's what I'm saying.
Let me translate what I understood, because we have to take the second break of commercials. Diplomatically, what you say is, our own country, no matter if we are belonging to an ethnic group, should not help in the conflict area that ethnic group we are belonging to, but we, no matter if it's Iran, you, Saudi Arabia, or others, should actually find a solution for the territory, not for each corresponding ethnic group.
Yeah, there's no other way.
It's not the way.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I believe, Mr. Ambassador, it's happening on the reverse now. Publicitate.